Everyone, my name is Ida Goslin, and I am Director of Sales Enablement and Analyst Relations at Zeta. I report into the product organization and support product and solution strategy with facilitating our Analyst Relations program and cross-functional collaboration and solution knowledge amongst our market-facing teams. Over the course of the last 18 months, Zeta has been heavily investing in our product and services. As a result, we were honored to be recognized among a short list of vendors in several of Forrester's Wave reports, including the Cross-Channel Campaign Management and Enterprise Marketing Suites Waves in 2019, and most notably as a leader in the 2020 Email Marketing Service Providers Wave. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Joe Stanhope, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester. Joe has served as both a friend and advisor of Zeta's, offering us crucial feedback that helps validate our vision and execute in a more strategic manner. Joe will be discussing the unprecedented impacts of the COVID-19 global pandemic and how brands can leverage these challenges to innovate and power complex customer journeys, all while meeting the intricate requirements for marketing in 2020 and beyond. And now I'll pass it over to you, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Ida. Appreciate the very kind introduction. Really like to thank the Zeta Global team for inviting me to join Zeta Live today. And most of all, I really want to thank everyone in the audience for taking time out of their very busy days to spend a few minutes with us. I know everyone's got a lot of balls in the air, a lot of personal and professional things going on right now, and our time is precious and valuable. So thanks so much to everybody who's involved in making this event happen, which is super impressive, and for joining us today. Looking forward to a great set of sessions. If I could get the control over the slides real quick, I'll start advancing. But I agree with what David said. He really nailed it when he mentioned that essentially we live in unprecedented times, and at the risk of sounding like Captain Obvious, I agree with that tremendously. And you know, I've been thinking a lot about what that means for marketing, for marketers. And oops, sorry, I still can't advance my slides. Or if someone can advance them for me, that would be fine too. So I've been thinking a lot about what this means for marketers. And, you know, marketers are no stranger to disruption is really the idea that I've come across. And David kind of mentioned this too, is, you know, marketers deal with and have dealt with, even before the pandemic, a tremendous set of concurrent, ongoing, long-term disruptive forces changing the world and landscape in which they operate. And so as this comes along, I echo the Zeta philosophy and what David was talking about around turning essentially chaos into opportunity. And I certainly want to be respectful of the reality and the disruption that's been caused by the pandemic and some of the economic fallout. That is very real. But certainly when we're going to be making changes anyway, I think this is a great opportunity to think about what we're doing and why, and see if we can create opportunities for not only short-term, but for long-term excellence. And I think that's why we're all really here today at Zeta Live. And I'd like to start by really setting the context for where we're operating, and I'd like to do that through the most important perspective that matters, that of the consumer, and the through line on so much of the disruption that's been happening pre and current to the pandemic really goes back to the idea that consumers are tremendously empowered and connected. If you think about it, even in the perspective of your own personal lives, the number of devices that we use to conduct personal and professional business, our changing attitudes, that we are increasingly willing to experiment in how we purchase and consume and use products, how we pay for them, the companies that we work with. That we are empowered to the point that we have what Forrester would call self-efficacy. We advocate for ourselves now. We have expectations for how customer experiences and engagement should go, and we seek those out actively. And when we don't get it, we let the world know. We've also become very sophisticated in terms of how we use information as consumers, not just our ability to collect and gather information, but how we put it to work, how we share it with one another and the companies that we may do business with. We've become very sharp around gathering and putting information to work for ourselves. And then finally, the overall evolution of of customer experiences. We don't really have separate ecosystems, or at least consumers don't really perceive separate ecosystems of mobile or digital or offline anymore. We expect a cohesive, relevant, consistent experience everywhere we engage with brands. And those worlds are really becoming very integrated and coming together. It's a tremendous opportunity and disruptive factor. Now, the net effect of a lot of this has been we're seeing buying cycles start to change. And what that means is that historically Forrester has kind of looked at buying cycles for consumers in sort of a 6-stage pie chart rather than a funnel. A discover, explore, buy, use, ask, engage set of cycles that really explains what a consumer buying cycle is at a macro level. And essentially you're talking about acquisition, purchase, and retention. But these forces that are in play today are really changing fundamentally how consumers think about that. And if you look at how that's changed, what we see is that it's breaking down, right? What we're seeing is not just a 6-step cycle, but a series of kind of ongoing, never-ending cycles where we do bring customers in, but there's been a huge shift to loyalty and retention because our preference as consumers has been to experience brands and products really without necessarily committing. So we're seeing a lot of new product formats, a lot of new business models, payment systems where we can gather or use or consume a product without committing as much or for as long a term or without lock-in. And that's really turning retention into the most important revenue driver for most companies today, which is a big sea change for marketing, which has historically been rather acquisition-centric. It also means that products are the engine of growth. It's not just about marketing creating opportunities for persuasion. It's really about making a product as compelling over a long-term basis to consistently get customers to renew, to continue using, and to advocate for those products. Now, what I think is so interesting about this is that what it tells us ultimately is that marketers win in customers' moments. It's not about picking a big audience and using a broadcast medium to tell customers what they think they want to hear at the time we want to tell them. It's not even about a digital world in which we try to have a one-to-one engagement with a customer. It's really about taking that buying cycle and breaking it down into its constituent literal moments and being ready to engage with that customer whenever and however they want to touch a brand. And what's happening now in 2020 is really a big shift. If we look at some of Forrester's data, what we see is that we're seeing big changes in the demands on marketing as a result of this. So in 2 big dimensions, we've seen shifts as a result of these disruptions and a shift in the buying cycle and really this overall movement towards moments. The engagement breadth, the palette of touchpoints and devices where we engage with customers continues to grow. We all understand this. And the granularity of engagement continues to drill down as close to the individual or even within the individual level as possible. And that has a huge impact on marketing strategy, our technology, our data, our processes, because now it's about getting to an individual in a real-time fashion when they need us and having the tools and systems to help marketers accelerate customer engagement, predictive, automation-oriented technical capability to back up marketers' creativity. Now, this isn't just something that was happening before the pandemic. This is ongoing, and I think what we've seen during the pandemic is not a wholesale pivot away from some of these trends. We've seen, and David mentioned this too, an acceleration of those trends, right? We're going to move very quickly to adopt some of these trends much more quickly than we might have otherwise. And our data shows that the pandemic has accelerated an overall shift to digital. 84% of online consumers tell us they have bought as much, if not more, during the pandemic. And that seems relatively straightforward. I'm certainly one of those consumers. I bet a lot of the people in Zeta Live today are those people. But what's more important is that a lot of these behaviors are here to stay. If we look at and we ask consumers at Forrester, what are you going to continue doing? Even after we come out of some of these stay-at-home orders or as the pandemic and resulting economic impact starts to resolve itself, we see some pretty firm data that a lot of the behaviors that are being exhibited now are going to continue. And so who do you buy from? Companies like Amazon, which I think is a proxy for large-scale retailers and e-commerce. Certainly the market has moved to a world where the companies that had strong commerce and mobile capabilities who could adapt quickly to the pandemic have been in a very good position. You've seen companies like Walmart and Best Buy talk about large year-over-year jumps, leaps forward at 100%, 300% or more jumps in year-over-year e-commerce performance. So ordering more on Amazon, but also what we order online. So online restaurant delivery, purchasing groceries online. I, for one, bought groceries online for the first time after the pandemic hit. I continue to do that. I think I will continue to do that even after we come out of this crisis. Even paying for products differently and taking receipt of products differently. So you're seeing a long-term wholesale shift in the overall experience. And I think retail is a really nice lens to look at through here. And what we see is who we're buying from, what we're buying online, how we pay for it, and how we take receipt of the products, all changing on a permanent basis here. And that's pretty incredible. So this is the landscape that we're operating in now. And if we think about moving forward and how we can make the most of these moments as marketing organizations, what it comes down to really is starting to become very, what we call at Forrester, customer obsessed. And we'll look at what that means. I think being customer obsessed is really critical because it is a philosophy, an approach for a marketing organization that will help you always put the customer front and center in everything that you do. We can advance the slide real quickly. And customer obsession is a large scale concept that affects all of marketing and customer support. We would define it as putting the customer at the center of your leadership, strategy, and operations. And I think marketing is well positioned to drive this within enterprises because nobody else but marketing truly understands the customer, is tasked with representing the customer internally, is capable of engaging with the customer everywhere that customer wants to be in those moments. And what customer obsession really becomes as you try to play it out within a company is changing the operating model. So rather than being aware of customers, we allow customers to lead engagement. Rather than merely possessing data, we turn that data into intelligence and use those insights to drive engagement. Rather than trying to be perfect and long-term all the time, we work at the speed of the customer. We try to engage with them when and where they are. We learn how to experiment and adapt very quickly. And we have to change how we organize. Marketing has necessarily become very structured, very sophisticated, very advanced, and that means we've created a lot of silos within marketing. If we're going to create these moments across this palette of engagement touch points at that level of individual granularity, we've got to break down those organizational silos and learn how to connect that customer experience across that entire buying cycle. And this pays off. There's a big pot at the end of that customer obsession rainbow. When we look and we ask customers, you know, if you believe that a business is customer obsessed and they're solving problems for you and they're engaging with you in the right way, the benefits are very clear. Consumers say they're 7 times more likely to stay with a business. They're 8 times more likely to spend more with a business. They're 8 times more likely to recommend that business to others. So changing your operating model, evolving to customer obsession, advocating for it within your organization has a huge, huge payoff. And now we have to talk about how do you make that happen? Where is that opportunity? Like David was talking about, what can we change, right, within this chaos to create short and long-term benefits? And I want to talk about how we harness some of these capabilities, harness this disruption. If we're going to make changes anyway, let's make productive changes. Harness that disruption so that you can build sustainable competitive advantages within your industry to become the disruptor. And this requires that we change our mindset in 4 different areas that I want to talk through. One is talking about an adaptive approach to operations and strategy. And again, driving loyalty, shifting the mindset from pure acquisition to a balance of acquisition and loyalty to meet the needs of modern consumers and that new buying cycle. And so what that means is first rethinking what is the purpose of marketing even, right? If we're customer obsessed, what does it mean to be a marketer? What is the purpose and scope of responsibility for a marketing organization today? And a lot of times it is just to get more customers in the door and to sell them more things. I would disagree with that. I would say that a marketer should do 3 things, the 3 H's, if you will. Marketers should be human, helpful, and handy. You should be human. You should treat your customers the way you would want to be treated, or the way you treat your friends and colleagues and family. You should be helpful. You should help your customers solve their problems, not just sell them more things. And you should be handy. You need to be flexible to accommodate changing market conditions. And 2020 has really illustrated that better than I ever could have in a presentation. We have to build communications using these 3 H's because it delivers greater authenticity, it solves problems and creates value, and it delivers the right interaction at the right moment. As we deliver more interactions using the 3 H's, we've got to think about value. And Forrester creates value, and we talk about creating value with each type of engagement in 3 or 4, I should say, I apologize, different areas. You can look at your customer journeys and you can map those out, and you can back into every time I engage with a customer, it should drive one of 4 kinds of value. It should drive economic value, or it can drive functional value, filling some kind of a purpose of an offering, experiential value that is pleasant and engaging. It can be symbolic, where it creates meaning for the self or others. And if you're not creating value with every interaction in one of these 4 areas, then you need to go back and make sure that you're really thinking about the purpose of marketing and how you can engage with your customers. And it's never been more important now. Past that, we've got to change the way we plan marketing. This is a big operational shift because we've got to get faster, more granular, and more broad. And the annual planning process, where we assign dollars to channel budgets, is not going to help us get there. We have to rethink the way we plan marketing, and that means making it very cyclical and iterative. So we have many small planning cycles throughout the year or the planning period, rather than a singular monolithic planning process. And it's got to encompass 5 key areas: developing insights, taking those insights to understand our customers' journeys and buying cycles, determining what messaging we want to provide to customers within that journey, that's where the value lives, the context that defines when and how we deliver that messaging, and then of course the logistics, the budgets and the resources to make that come to life. And we're constantly measuring so that we can constantly adapt and change on a very quick basis, getting down to daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, sometimes annual type cycles. So we're constantly changing. And this year has really illustrated the value of that, because things are changing in the outside world so quickly. We need to be able to understand the impact and the incremental value of everything we're doing. We've got to be able to validate and verify every dollar that we're spending in marketing, showing that it works, but doing it in the way that respects what our customers need from us, be it a product or offering, or really establishing the brand and creating that relationship and symbolic value. The next big area that I want us to be thinking about is data. Now, we talked about data a little bit earlier. David mentioned it, and data is so critical because technology itself is really just a shell, right? We fill it up with data. Data is the fuel for technology and analytics and marketing operations capabilities. So in order to excel, in order to understand our customers, in order to be in the right moments, in order to personalize for them, we've got to have the right kind of technology and data capabilities. And for marketers, this is very much not about collecting data. This is not an academic pursuit for the marketer. This is all about putting data to work, right? You're not a curator. You want to activate data. And that's because we need data to understand customer journeys. Customer journeys without data are just a bunch of separate data points. We use data to understand the depth and what happens within that customer journey. We use data to tie that together, right? We can't do anything unless we really understand journeys, because then we don't know how to message, we don't know who to message to, we don't know how to drive that value. And doing that happens along 2 core dimensions. The first of which, of course, is actually collecting data. Now, this is where there's good news for marketers, because never before have marketers had access to so much amazing data. And I know that the data landscape is very much in flux, and it's going to be changing over the next couple of years. We have to be aware of those things. But really, we're in a great time to be a marketer in terms of data about customers. There's a lot of robust customer data within your organization, through third parties, through your partners, that can be generated probabilistically and modeled. We can develop a tremendous set of data that helps us understand what our customers need and want and how we're performing. So the first capability around making data come to life is gaining access and actually collecting all the relevant data, I recommend that you really start by understanding the use cases. What kind of insights do you want about your customers? How do you want to engage with your customers? And what data do you need to bring that to life? And then you can go out and really find the data that you need. The second big capability is tying that data together, connecting it, because otherwise it's just disparate data points. We want to take that data about your customer, we want to build a robust customer profile from which to do our insights and intelligence and execution and engagement work. So having a graph to understand how all those data points tied together, perhaps at a person or household or location or device level, being able to perform hygiene and enhancement on that data so we have the most complete, connected, scaled, and precise view of a customer as possible. Once we've got the data and the robust customer profile put together, we've got to think about technology. And this is where we're seeing a big shift with buyers today, is historically, we certainly have bought a lot of technology. Marketing has become a very technical discipline, right brain and left brain, where technology and creative go together. And certainly nobody can do marketing today without technology. We've spent a lot of time, a lot of money on technology so far. But there's always been a little bit of problem in that we've built these technology stacks for marketing very organically and over time, bit by bit, as the conditions have changed in the marketplace, which is a very real situation. What we've got to start doing is stop thinking about the technology as, let's say, a set of discrete applications, but start thinking about it as a complete integrated stack or set of integrated technologies that work together to achieve our goals. Right now, we tend to treat marketing technology like painting by numbers, where we've got a set of acronyms or categories of technology that we want, and we go and buy them like it's a shopping list, one by one, and then we allow them to operate essentially in silos by different people using different data. We've got to really back away from that. We've got to start thinking about it as a cohesive set of tools that work together. Now, part of this is retraining our minds to stop thinking about all those acronyms and all those categories. And I know that we're only human. And one of the ways we simplify, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those charts that has like a few thousand little tiny vendor logos on it. That's really complicated and it can be very intimidating. It's hard to look at one of those charts and really understand what's happening in the marketplace, especially if you've got a job to do. You need to get a set of tools or functionality to do the work, right, to deliver your customers the experiences they want and expect and demand. What I tell my customers is go back to square one and rethink the marketing technology stack and how you envision it. I want to break that complexity down because these very complex views of the marketing technology world are just not productive on a day-to-day basis. Break down the complexity into two categories. That is right, two categories. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, perhaps even oversimplified, but bear with me. If you think about it, every kind of marketing technology can be broken down into one of two basic categories: a system of insight, a system that handles customer data, it creates analytics and insights about those customers, or a system of engagement, a system that actually delivers an interaction with a customer. It handles content, it orchestrates and executes some kind of a touch with a customer. Every tool you've ever seen breaks down into one of those two areas. This is our starting point, taking that complexity and breaking it down into a world of insights and engagement. Now, I know the real world isn't that easy. We've all got some of those architecture and marketecture charts in a PowerPoint presentation somewhere that shows all kinds of data flying all over the place and backing back and forth and backing up on itself and going to lots of different systems for lots of different users. We've all seen those, we all have them, and we all love them. But I can't just prescribe to you a single approach. Everyone's got a different start and end point when we think about marketing technology. You might have different legacy investments. You might be in a different geography or a different industry. You might have different goals for engaging with your customers. So there's no one single answer for what kind of marketing technology stack you should build. When you start from the basis of systems of insight and systems of engagement, we can blow that out into Forrester's marketing technology framework that really prizes two things. It's comprehensive and complete, and it is integrated. At some point, you will need to fill out all of these capabilities in four categories: the data fabric, customer understanding, brand strategy, and brand experience. And you're going to need to fill in these 12 boxes. Now, you can do it with a few vendors. We can do it with a couple vendors. You might already have some of these and just need to fill a couple gaps. There might be some areas that you're very happy with and a few that you just want to improve. And that's perfectly fine. But at some point, you're going to have to fill all this in. This is a great construct for taking the inventory of your capabilities today, designating areas that you want to change or improve or evolve, and even for vendor selection and understanding which suppliers are strategic to you. Because not all vendors are created equal. Some vendors are very commoditized and provide capabilities you can get anywhere or negotiate on price. Some vendors are really critical to your success. They provide capabilities that truly do shine through to your customers, are critical for your operations, or can't be replaced anywhere else, or they're a great service provider to you and they're critical to your operations. This helps you also differentiate where you're going to make your investments. What are you going to fill in? And which vendors and suppliers are you going to invest the most in? Where do you have to direct those precious resources, which again, has never been more important in 2020 because there's so much pressure to be efficient and fiscally responsible. So as we move on, the next stage is addressing the issue of velocity and complexity. You can have the data, you can have the tools of the trade, you can have a great customer-obsessed strategy and approach and planning effort. But we still are contending with a world that is very broad, very fast, and very complicated. And this is where artificial intelligence comes in. Now, I know there's been a lot of heat about artificial intelligence in the marketing world, a lot of excitement, a lot of expectations, and I almost didn't even bring it up today. But I actually think it's really important because I think AI is going to be a very, very powerful enabler to achieving scale in a customer-obsessed world like we're looking at today. So I would look at artificial intelligence as a tool to help you get smart and fast. And I think this is important because if we look at the current ecosystem, what we've seen is that modern marketing has become complex, high volume, high velocity. And the reality is, even though you're all great marketers and you all work really hard and you all have tremendous skills and you're all wonderful people, you're just people. Our human brains do not scale to the degree that modern marketing needs it. There are limits to how many people you can hire. There are limits to how hard we can work. There are limits to how many hours a day we can scour information and try to sequentially manage marketing processes. Human beings need help to meet the requirements of modern marketing. So there's a gap between what we can physically achieve and what our current capabilities possess and what we need to do. And that's the gap that we look to AI to fill. Again, we're not talking about replacing marketers with AI. We're not talking about turning marketing over to a computer. Forrester's on record as saying, we do not believe that artificial intelligence at the enterprise level replaces a lot of human beings. What it does is it helps marketers be better at what they do. AI could be the best thing that ever happened to you because it's going to allow you to automate a lot of the repeat, difficult, drudgery type work so that you can do essentially your day job again. Now, what that means is thinking about what AI is great at. And AI is good at three things. It's good at handling complex problems, it's good at understanding data-rich problems, and it's good at understanding highly iterative problems. And that sounds just like marketing in 2020 to me. Complex, data-rich, and iterative. So the way I want you to think about this is starting to adopt artificial intelligence today so that you can prepare to excel at using artificial intelligence and automation technologies in the future. Now, I want you to start with bite-sized, contained use cases, and they exist today. You can turn these on relatively easily. You can control them. You can test and measure them so that you can start adapting your processes to leverage AI. You can establish credibility by measuring and proving their value to your company. Doing AI to support your digital ad buys, personalization, surfacing insights, optimizing certain parts of campaigns, like when messages get sent, for example, or which content gets selected, even helping you create audiences for marketing. You can look at these as discrete use cases for artificial intelligence that you can use on top of your existing processes, learn from them, adapt your processes, prove that they work, and use that as the business case to continue adopting sequentially more and more artificial intelligence use cases over time. If you get good at using the smaller use cases today, you're going to be ready for the really sophisticated use cases as they develop and come along over the next 2 or 3 or 5 years. You don't want to wait for 5 years and then decide you're going to go from 0 to 60 and use the most complex use cases, because you'll already be behind and your organization won't be ready for it. So if you start working on it now, you're future-proofing yourself and you're getting the benefits in the short to mid-term. Now, all this goes to show that we can take a number of different steps. We've got a variety of levers to perfect customer engagement strategy to win in customers' moments. And as I wind down, I just want to say that I want to reinforce the idea that marketing has never been more critical. I know we're all under a lot of pressure. It's hard to justify everything that we're doing sometimes. There's a lot of pressure to make changes. It's a difficult environment. But the one takeaway, if you could learn just one thing from today, is do not stop marketing. There's about 40 years of serious academic research looking at a number of past recessions and economic downturns that prove econometrically, academically, quantitatively, that companies that do not market, that turn off their marketing or go dark during downturns, struggle to recover because you're creating blank space for your competitors to gain share and branding in your absence. It is also harder to accelerate and reboot marketing efforts after not having done it. So it makes the recovery, you lose ground during the recession or the economic downturn, but you also struggle and take longer to come out of that hole later on because it's harder to accelerate and ramp back up. Now, I know you're gonna have to shuffle some priorities, might have to make some adjustments, and that is perfectly fine. As long as you prioritize customer experience, stay customer obsessed, and emphasize that critical focus on loyalty, you can maintain a level of marketing that sets you up to accelerate very quickly as we do come out of this eventually, because I know we will come out of it at some point. So to just reinforce a few final points, look at this as planning for where you want to be in the next 2 years, not just for getting out of 2020 intact, but look at this as a longer term planning effort to make the most of the situation we're in here in 2020, but also to set yourself up for future success and for future excellence. So make that pivot to loyalty and retention. Make sure you're not just spending money on acquisition. Look at customer experiences that are ineffective or broken. Look at those as low-hanging fruit. Always think about where you can create value from the customer perspective, and be sensitive to what your customers need today, even if it doesn't involve selling them something right now. And then adopt a customer obsessed attitude and advocate for that within your organization. Keep the customer at the center. Determine how you want this to manifest over the long term. Don't just make changes for this year, but think about customer obsession over the long term. And start thinking about how you can accelerate, especially your planning processes, to be more nimble and agile, and again, always drive measurable value. And then think about how you can truly innovate. Again, how we harness disruption to become the disruptor. Develop a data strategy based on what you want to accomplish from a customer obsession standpoint. Have a cohesive marketing technology roadmap to build technologies that work together to create that level of breadth and granularity that marketing in moments requires. And think about how you're going to use tools such as artificial intelligence to drive scale and speed through automation and intelligence. With that, I'd like to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here at Zeta Live, and I hope you have a great event.